My parents threw out every photo of me with my brother, who passed away, and then handed me emancipation papers 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. When I asked why, my mom, in a rage, screamed, "Why wasn't it you in that car?" I was speechless. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, she opened a letter and froze. Since then, she hasn't eaten a bite. I was just looking for Christmas decorations in the garage when my world collapsed. There, crumpled in trash bags, were all our photos, everyone with me and my brother tossed out like we were disposable. It's been 3 years since the accident, and my parents weren't just grieving. They were slowly, deliberately erasing me from the family. Ethan, my brother, died in a crash at 17. I was supposed to go with him that night, but I got the flu and stayed home, sick and throwing up. Lucky me. Except it doesn't feel that way. Because ever since, my parents look at me like I stole their chance to keep their real child. To them, Ethan was everything. Football team captain, honor roll, the perfect son. I was just the weird, quiet one who draws and has panic attacks. And to top it off, my parents are mental health professionals. Mom's a therapist and dad runs support groups for grieving people. Ironic, right? If it weren't so tragic, it'd be almost funny. They won't even pay for my therapy, so I work at a bookstore after school to afford a session every 2 weeks. Last year, they had their miracle IVF baby, Noah, a fresh start where neither their dead son nor their inconvenient daughter fit. I overheard Mom on the phone with my aunt saying, "Things are easier now. We only have to worry about one kid. We can finally breathe. One kid, the baby. Noah." I didn't even count anymore. That night at dinner, I lost it. I confronted Mom about why our photos were in the trash. She broke down crying like never before and said, "I can't look at them. They have his eyes." Dad slammed the table so hard everything shook. "Why do you always have to upset your mother?" 2 weeks later, at a family meeting, the table was covered with legal papers. Mom had this fake smile plastered on. "You're so mature, sweetheart. You work, you pay for your therapy. We think it's time to make it official." The emancipation papers basically kicked me out, but they framed it as doing me a favor. Dad added, "You'll have more freedom to prepare for college. My Aunt Laura offered to help you get settled." I saw their will right there when she grabbed a pen. Everything went to Noah. 3 years after losing Ethan, I was completely erased. I signed the papers with shaky hands. Before I left, Mom handed me Ethan's old backpack. "Take it. I can't stand to see it." Inside was a birthday card for my 14th birthday. Ethan died 2 weeks before he could give it to me. My parents hid it in their drawer and forgot about it for 3 years. It read, "To my favorite person in the world, I can't wait to see you grow up. Love, your big brother." That night, I cried harder than ever. They even made me move out that same week. They wanted me gone before Noah's first birthday because I was nothing but a burden. When I got to Aunt Laura's, she was stunned. "I thought you were just visiting for the weekend to look at colleges." I showed her the papers, and her confusion turned to fury. That manipulator did the same when our dad died. Right. Then she called her friend Sarah, a social worker. Sarah looked at the papers and said, "This is abandonment dressed up as independence." They planned this. Aunt Laura turned her guest room into my bedroom that same day, no questions asked. She just said, "This is your home." That's when the truth started spilling out. My parents had told everyone I was troubled, that I'd been acting out since Ethan died, that I'd begged to be emancipated to find myself. They'd been crafting their story for months. I kept reading Ethan's card, full of big brother love, while my parents couldn't even look at me. When I went back for my stuff, I found their draft book on grief, 400 pages, and I mentioned twice. On their social media, they'd erased me completely, posting only about their perfect new family of 3. With Sarah's help, I started gathering evidence. My therapist helped me write a letter to the family. My bookstore boss offered me full-time hours when she heard. After my letter, extended family started calling. Even my grandma got suspicious. What happened with Emma at Christmas? Then the family skipped Noah's birthday party, and I wasn't there either. My parents lost it. Their stories didn't add up, and they started contradicting themselves. They showed up at Aunt Laura's demanding she back them. She wouldn't even let them in. "You're not getting near her." That's when Mom showed her true colors. "Why wasn't it you in that car?" she screamed at me, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The next day I woke up to 47 missed calls from Mom, but Dad's message chilled me to the bone. "We know what you told them. Come home now or we'll make sure everyone knows the truth about the accident." That threat left me shaking. What truth? There was no secret. I had the flu. I stayed home. Ethan went to the party alone and never came back. Aunt Laura found me on the steps, still clutching my phone. She sat with me. "Show me." I handed her the phone and her jaw clenched as she read. "That manipulator," she muttered, stopping herself. "Pack your bag, we're going to Grandma's." The 2-hour drive was tense. Aunt Laura made 3 calls, each angrier than the last. I caught phrases like threatening a minor and documented abandonment. Grandma's house smelled of cinnamon rolls and safety. She hugged me tight when we arrived. "I've been waiting for you, my girl." We sat in the kitchen as Aunt Laura filled her in, and Grandma's face hardened with every detail. When we got to Dad's threat, she stood and went to her office. She returned with a thick manila folder. "I've kept everything since Ethan's funeral," she said, opening it. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, photos. "Your dad's always been manipulative. I saw him do it with your grandpa, and I wasn't going to let him do it to you." The first paper twisted my stomach. It was an email from Mom to her sister, 2 years old. "We're figuring out what to do with Emma. It's getting harder. That constant reminder is killing our marriage." 2 years. They'd been planning to get rid of me for 2 years. Grandma flipped the page, revealing bank statements showing they'd moved money from accounts meant for Ethan and me, funneling it all to Noah. "But this," Grandma said, pulling out one last paper, "this is what made me act." It was a post from Dad in a private grief group on social media. "Our daughter's spreading lies about the night our son died. She says she was sick, but we know she convinced him to go alone because she didn't want to deal with his friends. The guilt's eating her, and she's taking it out on us." It was dated a week ago, before they kicked me out, before everything blew up. "They're saying I made him go," I whispered. "They're saying a lot," Grandma replied, stern. My phone buzzed. A message from my cousin Mia. "Just heard what your parents said at Noah's party planning. That you were drunk and told Ethan to stay home so you wouldn't get caught. What's up with that?" "Drunk. I was 14. I had the flu. Mom gave me medicine and checked my temperature every 2 hours. That night, more messages poured in from cousins, aunts, uncles. The gossip spread fast, each version worse. I forced Ethan to go alone. I was supposed to be the designated driver. I was drinking at home. They're at Noah's party planning meeting," I told Grandma, showing her the messages. She stood immediately. "Perfect. We know where to find them." The community center was packed with balloons and streamers, the parking lot overflowing. Family from 3 states had come for Noah's first birthday. From outside, I could hear Mom's loud, forced laugh. We walked in together, Grandma in the center, Aunt Laura and me at her sides. The room went silent. Mom's face went pale. Dad stepped forward. "Mom, this isn't the time." "Sit down, Michael," Grandma ordered. Her voice honed, raising 4 kids and burying a husband, leaving no room for argument. She walked to the center, all eyes on her, some confused, some waiting for gossip. "I've heard the stories you're spreading about my granddaughter," she began. "About the night my grandson died. It's time everyone heard the truth." Mom started crying. Dad tried to interrupt. Grandma silenced them with a look. "Emma was sick that night. I know because I spoke to her mom at 8 p.m. You told me her fever was 103.1 and you were considering the ER." The room's mood shifted. People whispered. "I have the call logs," Grandma continued. "Hospital records from the next morning. When the fever wouldn't break, pharmacy receipts, everything." She pulled out her phone and read. Messages from that night. Mom updating the family on my fever, photos of me sick on the couch, my hospital wristband with the date. "So I want to know," she raised her voice. "Why are my son and daughter-in-law saying their 14-year-old was drunk? Why say she convinced her brother to go alone? Why blame a tragic accident on a girl who had nothing to do with it?" The silence was heavy. Uncle David stood. "They told us she's been messed up since the accident, acting out, wanting emancipation. They left her alone," Aunt Laura cut in blunt. "Threw out every photo of her and Ethan, cut her from the will, kicked her. Out 2 weeks before 18 because they didn't want her at the party." "That's not," Dad started. "I have the papers," I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. "The emancipation papers they made me sign, saying it was for my good. The will I saw on the table. Their book draft on grief, 400 pages, mentioning me twice." My cousin Mia's mom gasped. "You wrote a book on grief and barely mentioned your living daughter?" "She's troubled," Mom whispered. "She needed space to heal." "She needed parents," Grandma snapped. "Support, therapy, and you wouldn't pay for it. Both of you mental health experts." "We offered?" Dad tried. "You offered nothing," I said, voice steady now. "I work 30 hours a week to afford therapy. You haven't given me a dime for groceries in a year. You had another kid to replace us both, and when that wasn't enough, you erased me completely." "Don't be dramatic," Mom said. I pulled out Ethan's card, hands shaking, and read aloud. "To my favorite person in the world, I can't wait to see you grow up. Love, your big brother." My voice broke. "You hid this from me for 3 years. Kept the last thing my brother wrote because you couldn't stand that he loved me." Aunt Sarah, who'd been taking notes, stepped forward. "I've been helping Emma document this professionally. What I see is emotional abuse and abandonment. Now they're spreading defamatory lies about her role in Ethan's death. That's unacceptable." The room erupted, relatives arguing, some defending my parents, others shocked. Noah started crying in his stroller, but Grandma, steady as a rock, waited for the noise to die down and spoke again. "I've made my decision. Michael and Lisa have shown who they are. How they treat their daughter is how they'll treat Noah when he doesn't meet their expectations. She pulled out an envelope. I changed my will. You're out. Emma gets her share, same as Noah. Through a trust Laura will manage. You won't see a cent. Mom was sobbing now. Dad's face turned purple. You can't do this, he choked out. I can, and I did, Grandma replied, calm. My lawyer filed the changes. He's also ready if you keep slandering Emma. If you continue, we'll take legal action. She turned to the family. If anyone prefers gossip over evidence, there's the door. The party was now to celebrate the truth and welcome my granddaughter back. The family split. A few left with my parents, but others, like Mia and her parents, stayed. Uncle David apologized, admitting he should have questioned their story. As my parents grabbed Noah to leave, Mom shot me one last look. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I didn't hesitate. You did that the day you decided I didn't matter. I just refused to stay silent. They left with my brother, and though I felt bad for Noah, Grandma squeezed my hand and whispered, the trust is untouchable. His money's safe, and Laura will ensure he knows the truth when he's older. So I hadn't lost him forever. The party went on, smaller, quieter, but real. Relatives approached, apologizing for believing the lies, sharing memories of Ethan, welcoming me back. On the drive home, Aunt Laura held my hand tightly. You did amazing today. Ethan would be so proud. I thought of my brother, his card in my pocket, the truth finally coming to light. The road ahead wasn't easy, therapy, nightmares, learning to live without my parents. But I had Grandma, Aunt Laura, and the truth. That felt like enough to start. The weeks after the party were a strange mix of relief and chaos. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from distant relatives wanting details. Some who'd sided with my parents reached out, asking questions they should have asked years ago. Aunt Laura set up a desk in my room to organize Grandma's documents, bank statements, emails, screenshots of my parents' posts building their narrative. The evidence was so clear it took my breath away. They didn't just abandon me after Ethan died. They'd planned for years to erase me while posing as grieving parents and mental health experts. The bookstore became my refuge. My boss, Mrs. Patel, went out of her way to help since learning the truth, adjusting my hours for therapy and letting me study for the GED during slow shifts. The smell of books and coffee felt safe when everything else was a mess. 3 days. After the party, Mia showed up at the bookstore during my shift, looking as exhausted as I felt. We sat in the back during my break, and she spilled how things were with my parents. They won't let it go, she said, clutching her tea. Your mom called mine, crying, saying you turned everyone against them, manipulated Grandma to change. The will. I laughed, but it was bitter. Yeah, like a 17-year-old could manipulate Grandma. I told her, but they're saying everywhere you planned this since Ethan died that you wanted his share. Her voice dropped. They say you were jealous. It hit like ice water. Jealous? Sure, sometimes I envied Ethan. He was perfect, I was the odd one. But I loved him more than anything. He was my protector, my best friend, the only one who never made me feel worthless. They're also saying Aunt Laura coached you, Mia continued, that she's always resented your dad for being the favorite and is using you to get even. I thought of Aunt Laura, who took me in without hesitation, upending her life to give me a home. The idea that she'd use me for some old sibling grudge was absurd, but I knew my parents. They're masters at spinning stories to sound plausible. That night, Aunt Laura, Sarah, and I had dinner. Sarah dropped a bombshell. Your parents are talking to family services, she said calmly but directly. They're claiming you're a missing minor, manipulated by family. They want you back. But I'm emancipated, I replied, trembling. They signed the papers. Exactly, Sarah assured me. It won't hold, but they're escalating, trying to control the narrative. Aunt Laura's jaw tightened. What? Now? Sarah pulled out a folder. Document everything, every message, call, contact attempt. I've spoken to the assigned social worker who wants to know why 2 psychologists pushed their daughter to emancipate. It was almost laughable. My parents, dedicated to helping families, destroyed their own. Dad ran grief groups while telling them his living daughter killed his son. Mom counseled traumatized families while traumatizing me. The next weeks were a dance of documenting and keeping distance. My parents went from calling to showing up where they thought I'd be. They came to the bookstore twice, but Mrs. Patel wasn't having it. She told them it was private property and to leave. The second time, she called the police, and they were escorted out. They tried the school, not knowing I'd dropped out to focus on the GED after emancipation. The school secretary called Aunt Laura, confused because parents were requesting records for a student no longer enrolled. Everything was documented. Each lie they told was noted. Sarah helped us build a timeline showing their escalating behavior. So, real blow came when Uncle David called Aunt Laura. He'd been at a conference and ran into a colleague from Dad's grief group. The colleague, concerned, said, Michael's been talking about his daughter for months. The story keeps changing. First, she was troubled but getting help. Then she refused help. Then she made up lies about the accident. Now he says family kidnapped her. We're worried. Even Dad's professional circle was noticing the inconsistencies. Uncle David gave the colleague Grandma's number, suggesting he hear another side. Grandma became unstoppable. After years as the quiet matriarch, who planned parties and sent birthday cards, she refused to stay silent. She contacted family with the truth, armed with documents and a grandmother's fury. The family divided further, but not how my parents expected. People who'd backed them started asking questions. Why didn't they mention I was emancipated? Why did their story about the accident keep changing? Why hide Ethan's card for 3 years? Therapy got heavy. I wasn't just processing Ethan's death, but the trauma of my parents erasing me. They were supposed to love me no matter what. Dr. Carter helped me see their grief had turned toxic, and I was the scapegoat for their pain and guilt. They need someone to blame, she explained. For some, losing a child randomly is unbearable. Blaming you gives their pain a reason. But I was sick, I repeated over and over. I had the flu. There's proof. Facts don't matter to people fleeing their own pain, Dr. Carter said calmly. My parents, psychologists, couldn't handle their own mental health. The irony stung. They knew all the right things to say about grief and healing, even wrote a book, but couldn't live it. They were stuck in blame and denial, choosing to lose their living daughter rather than face that sometimes tragedies just happen. Things escalated again when Grandma got a cease and desist letter from my parents' lawyer, accusing her of defamation for spreading lies about how they treated me. They demanded she stop talking to the family and retract her statements about the will. Grandma didn't flinch. She hired her own lawyer and responded with proof of their defamation against me. Emails blaming me for Ethan's death, social media posts painting me as troubled, documented lies about the accident. They want to play lawyers? Grandma said over dinner. Fine, I've got 3 years of evidence on their behavior. Let's see how they like their own rules. Her lawyer, Mr. Brooks, was relentless. He not only denied their demands, but outlined the consequences if they kept lying about me, attaching screenshots of Dad's grief group posts showing his shifting stories and false accusations. My parents upped the ante, starting a blog on parental alienation, claiming family turned me against them. They never used my name, just our surviving daughter, but anyone who knew the story could tell it was me. Reading it was torture. They painted themselves as broken parents who'd lost both kids, one to death, one to family interference. They wrote how it hurt that their daughter refused to come home, that she'd cut them out, that she was poisoned against them. Each post was a masterclass in rewriting history. The emancipation they forced became me abandoning them. The photos they threw out were too painful to keep. Ethan's hidden card was something they'd planned to give me when the time was right. Sarah helped us catalog every post, flagging lies and contradictions. The IP traced back to Dad's office computer. He wrote these stories while helping other families heal. The breaking point was a blog post about the night Ethan died. Their version, I was impossible that afternoon, refusing to go with Ethan, making excuses. They implied, without saying it outright, that my actions led to him going alone and dying. I threw up after reading it. Aunt Laura found me curled up in the bathroom, shaking from crying. The survivor's guilt I'd carried for 3 years hit me all at once. Even though I knew it was a lie and had proof I was sick, their words burrowed deep. They want to break you, Aunt Laura said, holding me. They want you to come crawling back, accepting their version, becoming the troubled daughter they invented. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one who survived losing her brother and being rejected by her parents, working full-time, while finishing high school online, fighting in therapy, healing while they hid behind their professional facade. Grandma called an emergency family meeting. Not everyone came, but enough did. She laid it all out. Blog, legal threats, escalating lies. She showed the timeline Sarah built, the clear pattern of manipulation and abandonment. This isn't about picking sides in a family fight, she said, firm. This is about protecting a girl who's been hurt over and over by the people meant to care for her. Uncle David, after the conference, dug deeper. He contacted Ethan's high school friends from that night's party. They all said the same. I'd planned to go but was too sick. One still had old texts from Ethan, joking that he was the only sober one because his sister, the designated driver, was home with the flu. The evidence was undeniable, but my parents had crafted their reality so carefully that accepting the truth meant admitting 3 years of deliberate cruelty. Instead, they doubled down. They started showing up at family events where they knew I'd be, seeking confrontation. At my cousin Mia's graduation, Mom cornered me in the bathroom, crying, begging me to come home. We can fix this, she said, gripping my hands. Just tell them you were confused, that you misunderstood. We'll do family therapy. With you as the therapist? I shot back, pulling away. Mom, do you need help? Really? Her face changed instantly. Tears gone. You were always jealous, she whispered. Maybe you didn't make him go alone, but you were glad when he died. Finally, the only child. I wanted to laugh at how cruel and calculated it was. That was the real her, the one behind the therapist mask, willing to hurt her own daughter to avoid her pain. I left the bathroom and found Aunt Laura. We left the party, but not before half the family saw Mom chasing me, still playing the grieving mother for sympathy. Their blog posts got worse after that. Dad wrote about false memory syndrome, suggesting I'd been convinced to remember things that never happened. He talked about how grief makes you vulnerable to manipulation, how well-meaning family can unintentionally create false narratives. It was cruelty dressed as psychology, using clinical terms and his credentials to make their story seem logical. Anyone unfamiliar with the full context might believe it. But we had something stronger. The truth, backed by evidence and witnesses. Family members saw how they acted. We had 3 years of proof of abandonment and emotional abuse. The narrative war was escalating. My parents even went on a podcast. For grieving parents, dodging details but painting themselves as broken by family interference. They started a support group for alienated parents, using their titles to gain trust. Every move was countered with more documentation. Sarah connected us with a family law attorney specializing in defamation. Every post, podcast, and group talk was archived as evidence of a campaign to harm my reputation and mental health. The family was exhausted by the drama. Some stepped back, unwilling to get involved. Others picked sides based on who they believed, not who was right. The family that once gathered for every holiday and birthday fractured, maybe permanently. But I had my core support. Grandma, fiercely protective, Aunt Laura, who gave up everything to give me a home, Sarah lending her expertise, Dr. Carter helping me heal, Mrs. Patel ensuring I had a job and a safe space. Ironically, my parents' campaign to paint me as troubled and manipulative only highlighted how many people were willing to stand by. Me. Each lie was countered by someone who saw the truth. Each attempt to isolate me strengthened my bonds with those who saw through it. By fall, things settled into a strange balance. My parents kept up their grieving parent act. I kept building my life, studying for the GED, saving for college, going to therapy, healing in ways they couldn't or wouldn't. Grandma's trust for Noah and me was ironclad, legally protected, to ensure my brother got his share when he grew up, no matter what stories our parents told him. I held on to hope that one day, when he could ask questions, the truth would be there, documented and undeniable. But speaking the truth came at a cost. Family gatherings were split, planned to avoid overlap. Relationships of years were strained or broken. Family photo albums, once full of happy memories, now had gaps, missing faces, empty spaces where unity used to be. Still, I wouldn't change my choice to stand firm. The alternative, accepting blame for Ethan's death, letting them erase me, pretending their abandonment was my fault, would have destroyed me. As I prepared for what would have been Ethan's 21st birthday, I pulled out his card again. To my favorite person in the world, I can't wait to see you grow up. He'd never see who I became, but I was determined to be someone he'd be proud of, not the troubled girl my parents described, but a survivor who refused to let their pain define my truth. The fight wasn't over. My parents showed no signs of accepting reality, and their campaign to rewrite history continued. But I had something they didn't, the strength to face the truth, no matter how hard. With every day, every therapy session, every honest moment with those who loved me, I grew stronger. The girl who found those photos in the garage wasn't the same anymore. Now I was someone tougher, maybe sadder, but unbreakable. My parents tried to erase me, but all they did was turn their daughter into someone who'd never be invisible again. The battle for the family story raged on, but I wasn't alone anymore. Truth has its own power, and sooner or later, time reveals what others try to hide. For now, I'd keep shaping my life, documenting every truth, step by step,